Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm so excited. Today, we are talking to an awesome coach. We're going to be talking about the gift of anger with Lorraine Faehndrich, and Lorraine is a women's health coach. She specializes in helping women heal from pelvic and sexual pain, and her mission is to not only help women relieve their pain, but also to connect to their purpose and their passion, to create radiant health and live outrageously joyful lives. So, welcome, Lorraine.
Oh, thanks, Uma. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, I've heard Lorraine talk a bit about this topic of anger in the past, and she's like the perfect person to explore this with. So I'm so excited to jump right in. So Lorraine, let's just get right into it. Can you say something about why it's so important to be talking about anger in the first place?
Yeah, sure. So I love this topic, and because I think that so many of my clients, so many women in general, really have been conditioned to not allow their anger. Like we have a lot of nice, not so nice names for women who allow anger to flow in their lives, who welcome their anger into their lives. And so anyway, very early on, girls are conditioned out of it. And anger is big energy. And it's actually when it's flowing healthy in our body and it's not being obstructed or distorted, it's actually really gives us, it's like life force energy. It gives us energy for the things we want to do in our lives. It gives us more passion. Also is really important for setting healthy boundaries with people. And so because of the way we've been conditioned, though, that energy is often getting held back, and that actually takes a lot of energy and can lead to chronic pain syndromes. Which is why a lot of my clients have a lot of issues with expressing anger, but also find a lot of relief when they learn how to welcome and embrace that energy in their body. So, yeah.
So, can you talk a little bit about the different options that we have once we are experiencing anger? There's sort of like expression, there's suppression. We have different paths that we can take once we're experiencing that. So can you tell us a little bit about our options?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I'd say that mostly what happens, what I see anyway, what seems to happen in general in our culture is we're either suppressing an emotion, which we may be consciously aware that we're suppressing it. Like we've heard that anger is unhealthy. And so we start to feel angry, and then we like push it down and try and talk ourselves out of being angry, or we end up obsessing in angry thoughts rather than feeling the anger in our body. Or some of us can be suppressing so much that we're not even aware we're angry. So I actually work with a lot of women who just are like, I'm happy, I'm fine, everything is so great in my life except for this awful pain, So that's what suppression can look like. And then also expressing anger. So we see a lot of very unhealthy, this is another reason why we tend to suppress, because we see so many unhealthy expressions of anger in our lives, either through violence in our families or in society, or just like having really an angry parent, or people are dumping their anger. So when people are expressing anger that way, it's actually just kind of another way of suppressing it. It's just a way to get it out of our body so we don't have to feel it. And so when you actually feel anger in your body and know how to use it and work with it, it actually does all those things I was saying before, brings us energy, helps our body heal, helps us set healthy boundaries. But when we don't welcome it into our body, we're going to end up either suppressing, like you said, or expressing. So there's not anything unhealthy about actually expressing anger, but it's really important to feel it in your body first, because when you felt it in your body first and then you express your feelings, you're not actually dumping the emotion out, and the communication tends to go much better. It's stronger. Yeah, I could go on about that for a long time. So I'll just stop. I think I answered your question. Yeah.
So I can imagine that there's, like you said, there's so many people who don't even realize that they're holding on to anger. They think of themselves as being a happy person, a calm person. Maybe they think of themselves as being kind or spiritual, or they, I meditate or I do yoga or whatever it is. So can you give us a clue as to how we can start to uncover if maybe some of that is in there, it's underneath some of those, layers of those stories that we have about who we are? How do I know if I'm angry, if I'm a person who has not really felt that or identified it?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So I think, from the work you're doing and like just in the mind-body world, like the main tool for starting to feel any emotion is spending more time being present with sensations in your body in general. And if you have pain or other discomfort in your body, learning how to like allow that to be there and kind of sink deeper into your body so you can start to become aware of maybe some of the more subtle sensations in your body. So that process can start to, sometimes I will hear from women, once they start that process, well, that they feel more irritated at things, or it's harder for them to have patience with things because they're getting more in touch with their own inner experience. And so it's harder to ignore it or suppress it. I think that for some women, even that still keeps the anger at bay for a while. Like it's one of the last emotions for them to start feeling. And one way to start accessing it is to start to not write off the things that are like sort of subtler forms of anger, like being a little irritated at something or frustrated with something, instead of brushing those things off and trying to talk yourself into not being irritated or frustrated, starting to really welcome that and feel into the energy in your body. And then, I know, there's also specific ways to work with the energy of anger, but just as starting to access it. Sometimes if you suspect you're angry, you can do things too, like, or you haven't been feeling angry, like, and you're like, why am I not ever feeling anger? You can just put on some music, like some loud, angry music. You can do things like just moving your body, stomping your feet a little bit. One technique I learned from Christiane Northrup in her book, Goddesses Never Age, she talks about taking a towel and using it to like hit a chair or a table, which I really like because it doesn't take a lot of physical energy, but it makes a loud noise. So things like that can just, and then as you're doing that, one of the big places women get tripped up with anger is they're trying to get it out of their, or men or anybody, like they're trying to get it out of their body. And instead of doing something like that to get the anger out, doing something like that and at the same time really paying attention to the sensations in your body, like consciously making more space for it, welcoming it. Like it's like practicing keeping your attention on the sensations and what they feel like, so that your brain can start to learn this is okay, this is safe. And then it'll like a little more at a time, you'll start to be able to feel it more over time.
I love that. Thank you. I'm so glad that you brought that up, making that distinction between, because we do hear this a lot that, if you're angry, you should go punch a pillow or, but I feel like the intention in a lot of cases is to get the anger energy out of the body. And I love how what you're saying is it's actually to make space for it, to be with it, to allow it to flow within your body. It's not something that it's like, get it away from me, like get this out.
Yeah, and we've actually been taught that, you know, especially in the more spiritual world. And it's like people tell you, like, there's actually studies out there that are like, anger hurts you, but it's not anger hurting you. It's all the ways we suppress anger that are hurting us and other people. But yeah, so that's probably the biggest tip with anger, is to start focusing on welcoming it and feeling it in your body. Because when you do that, you don't feel the need to dump it on other people anymore. And you don't feel the need to, your brain starts to feel safer with it. It doesn't have to suppress it anymore. So yeah.
I love that. So Lorraine, would you be willing to walk us through a little bit of an exercise on how to work with some of that anger energy?
Sure, yeah. So do you want to, like, how should we do this? Just, yeah.
I guess we could just tell people they can bring to mind something that, you know, something recent that is provoking anger or irritation or anything in that family of feelings.
Yeah. Okay, great. So that sounds good. So, all right. So if you wanted to just take a minute to think about something that either you're aware you feel angry about, or something that's happened recently that had you feeling a little irritated or frustrated, or just you're not that happy about. And if you have paper and pen, taking a minute to just start, like, give yourself permission to go into it. Like, let yourself write about it for a minute and really, like, access the frustration or anger. And then as you're doing that, start to just bring your awareness into your body. Breathe into your low belly. And just start to notice what sensations are coming up. So you may want to stop writing at this point if you're writing. And as you bring your awareness into your body, you may first notice tension or contraction, or if you're having any kind of physical symptoms, you may notice those. So just welcome whatever's there. Give it permission to be there. Give it permission to move or change or do whatever it wants to do. And then imagine going a little deeper and just noticing what other sensations are there. And, you know, anger tends to be something people experience in their chest, their arms, their solar plexus, sometimes belly. So as you think about this situation, just starting to tune into what sensations am I noticing there. Maybe heaviness, contraction, swirling, tingling heat. Whatever you notice, just keep breathing and welcome the sensations. So just this is a great start. And if you're not feeling anything, that's okay. You just practicing this a little bit over time, you'll start to feel more. So whether you are feeling a sensation right now or not, the next thing that's really helpful to do with anger is imagine your energetic boundary, because anger is an emotion that usually comes forth to help us strengthen that boundary energetically. So the way you do that is you imagine that there is a bubble around you, 360 degrees around you, that's about as far away as your arms. So if you stretch your arms out in front of you, bring them around to the sides, maybe up over your head, just get a sense of, this is my energetic space around me. Some people might think of it as like an aura. So the part of that I call your boundary is the edge of this bubble that's around you. And it's a really great practice on a regular basis to imagine this boundary around you and light it up any color that you choose. So it could be a white light, or it could be a bright color like blue or green or red. And the intention of this boundary is to really help you have a space that is you, that gives you, like, it's a safe, protected place where you can welcome all the sensations in your bodies, all your thoughts, all your emotions, anything that's going on, and it's not going to like leak out onto anyone else. And at the same time, it keeps other people's thoughts, opinions, emotions out, unless you give them permission to come in. So when anger is working, flowing freely in our body, it actually helps to strengthen this boundary and really just keep this boundary in place. So if someone says something out there and you have a healthy boundary in place, you may not feel angry when they say it because the anger did what it was supposed to do. If you are feeling angry, it usually means that somehow that got in a little bit. And I can talk more about that later, but for right now, one thing you can do with the sensations, maybe just take a minute to breathe into your low belly again. Imagine the situation or the thing that you're feeling like angry or frustrated about. Connect to that sensation. You can invite the sensation to flow into your boundary and help to strengthen that. So what that could look like is that it gets brighter. You might see the energy flowing into the boundary, making it brighter. You might see it light in flames, like you could actually have flames shooting out around it. And those flames are not intended to hurt anyone. They're really a way to clear the energetic space so that what's out there, at least for the moment, stays out there, and it gives you some clear space to be in touch with what's happening inside yourself. So just take a minute to imagine that, welcoming the sensation, inviting it into your boundary. If it doesn't want to go into your boundary, do not force it to go. Just welcome it there and be curious about what happens. Another important thing to note is, just like we were talking about before, the goal of this isn't to get the sensations out of your body. It's actually to welcome them. So inviting anger into your boundary is a little bit like completing an energetic circuit, and it might actually feel stronger in your body when you do that. Or sometimes it will feel a little less, but you're not trying to get it out. You're still really allowing it to be present in your body and do what it's there to help you do, which is either establish or strengthen this boundary around you. So at this point, there's different options about how you can work with it. One thing I really like to do is, I know you've probably read the book Language of Emotions by Carla McLaren, and a lot of this comes from her book. She has a whole chapter on anger. But one of the, she for all the different emotions identifies different questions that you can ask about them. And for anger, the question is, what needs to be protected? What needs to be preserved, I think. So once you are imagining this boundary and you're imagining that what's out of you is outside, and what's inside is all that you're really responsible for or have any control over. So once you have that separation, you can go inside and ask yourself what needs to be protected, what needs to be preserved. And what I find usually for myself or other people that I'm working with is that it's almost never we actually need protection from someone that's out there. it's almost always that whatever they said or did out there triggered something in us. And this really gives us the opportunity to start to find what that is, because we can change that. Like, we can strengthen our boundary. We can stop letting what other people around us do trigger self-critical thoughts or judgments, or inhibit the ways we allow ourselves. So like usually it's some way that we are not allowing ourselves to be fully who we are as a result of something that happens out there, or we're taking it on and judging ourselves. You know, I like to use this little example of, you know, if I'm walking, if my mother called me and said, you know, got mad at me because I hadn't called her recently, you know, that would probably upset me. But if I'm walking down the street and some random person says to me, you should have called me, why haven't you called me? Like, it's the same exact words, right? But one, I do not let in, because it's very clear that it's about them, not me. Whereas when someone I care about says the same thing to me, it gets fuzzy about whether it's about them or about me. And so this process is about helping you see what's really about what's happening inside.
Wow. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I loved doing that. I feel more energetic now. I feel more alive. And it really, like, and the energy of anger is so, there's an intensity to it, and it mobilizes us
Yes.
for action.
Yes.
And it actually, it feels good.
Yes. It does.
Good. Like,
when it starts moving, it's like,
yeah, it
power and energy now.
It like woke me up a bit. I love the visualization that you led, and I love the lighting on fire of the boundary. I feel like a dragon when I do there's like fire in my belly, and then I'm creating this circle of a boundary around me that's really strong. And as you said, it's not about getting it out, and it's not about hurting anybody. It's really becoming really clear on, this is me, right? This is my space. This is my area. And I also love what you said about, so it gives us a chance to pause, right? So instead of just exploding outwards, doing an exercise like this just gives us a chance to stop, to feel ourselves, feel our body. And then from that place, we can decide if there's something that needs to be done or said. And maybe there's nothing that needs to be done or said. Maybe everything was just being with our body. So
yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you.
So I just want to like reinforce what you said about how it feels good when even for me, so I'm someone who was always like the angry one in my family. Like, why are you never happy with this? Why are you like, I was like judging myself. Why am I so angry all the time? You know? But I was one of those people who was like expressing it all the time without feeling it. And when I started really working with this and imagining flames coming out of my boundary, and then actually for a long time, I just did a conscious anger practice where every day I would do something similar to what we just did, but like get into it a little bit more, really welcome the anger in my body, practice allowing the energy. Like, I would start hysterically laughing sometimes, but I could sense how much resistance I had to allowing that much energy in my body, even though it felt good. Like, even though it felt like, wow, I could like do anything with this amount of energy, but there was still something in me that was like squashing it and keeping it down. And so it's a very powerful practice to allow into your life.
That's so interesting to hear you talk about that, because you feel power, as you said, you feel powerful. And I think maybe this goes back to a resistance to feeling powerful that is related to, again, like women and, giving our power away. And so there can be a discomfort at feeling that amount of energy and that amount of power being in our body if it's if it's unfamiliar, it can be a bit scary and off-putting, I suppose.
Well, I don't, we live in a culture that has consciously and intentionally, historically disempowered women to the point where it really wasn't safe for women to be feeling their power. Because you're feeling all this energy, what are you going to do with it if you're not like, and right. So it is healing a lifetime of that conditioning, and starting to reclaim something that's actually safe and healthy and beautiful. And the result of so much suffering when it's suppressed, because if you can feel how big that energy is, our body has to work really hard to suppress that amount of energy. It's easily responsible for chronic fatigue, depression, chronic pain. So many things get freed up when you start allowing that energy to move in your body.
And anxiety, that's
anxiety, absolutely.
Most of my clients are working with that with that energy. So I can really see now, like the gift of anger. It's very tangible. And so Lorraine, when it's flowing freely, like in your body, how does it feel? Like viscerally, how does it feel for you?
Well, it's like grown and kind of progressed over time, and it's not always the same, but I feel it was hard for me to pinpoint at first because it was just kind of like movement, and it's not even like tingling. I just feel like energy a lot at first in my arms, but as I started to allow it more, like all the way down into my pelvis, my low belly, I happen to think, when we're suppressing, I feel like suppressing emotions is just suppressing energy. They're all different kinds of energy, and as is sexual energy. And so as you start to allow your emotional energy to move more, you're also going to start to feel sexual energy more. And so I would say that higher level of energy moving in my body often can feel like having more sexual energy flowing through my body as well. It just feels like turned on to life, like not just in my pelvis, but everywhere, kind of like things look brighter and feel crisper, and, you're having more sensation in your body, and things are more alive and passionate. And
Wow.
So.
Wow. And so can you share with us a story from your own life, from your own experiences about how you've worked with anger sort of in the moment or around any situation that shows up for you?
Yeah, sure. So I have one simple example that I use a lot. One of the main places I struggled with anger was around my relationship with my mother in a lot of different ways. And I think that that's not uncommon because anger is about having a boundary, and very often with our parents, in particular our mothers, we never have the opportunity to really create a healthy boundary in the first place. So if we're kind of like enmeshed or codependent, or we're going to feel a lot of anger when we're around that person or triggered by that person. So one simple thing that often happened was I use a sponge by my sink, like to clean my dishes, and my mother had always used handy wipes. And every time she came to my house, and this is like going on until I was in my 40s, she would make some sort of comment about the fact that sponges were not good, and that I should be using a handy wipe. And so when I started practicing with this process and welcoming this, normally that would have usually led to me defending my choice or getting in some sort of minor argument about that. And so when I started practicing welcoming the sensations in my body and imagining my boundary and setting it in flames, and really being aware that what she was saying was out there, and and getting curious about like what's going on in here, what needs to be protected, what needs to be preserved. And I just want to say again that a lot of this comes from the language of emotions. It's Carla McLaren's process. So what I noticed was that I was judging myself. Like there was a part of me, you know, maybe like an inner child part or just some old programmed part that didn't think I was allowed to have a different opinion than my mother. So when my mother was saying, you should have handy wipes and sponges are bad, in my mind, there was a voice saying, yeah, why, you know, like you're bad. Like you should be doing it that way. And the defending was really about defending myself from my own internal voice. When I realized that, and I was like, oh my God, I'm totally allowed to like a sponge. And after 40 years of life, to choose to have a sponge by my sink. And my mother's totally allowed to prefer handy wipes. And like in one moment, it just was like, it stopped being about me. And I could see that it was just about her. And actually it was about not only that she preferred handy wipes, but it was because of her life, her inability to see that anybody else could prefer something different or have a different experience. And then so there was a lot of freedom. I mean, it sounds like a silly example. A lot of people might automatically be able to see that that was about the other person, but it was kind of earth-shattering for me because it applied not just to that situation, but to everything. To everything. Every time I was ever angry about anything, it was almost always because of what was happening in me. And that when I could use the energy to create a healthy boundary like we did, I could give other people, I could not only give myself permission to be fully who I was with all the choices I was making and how I was feeling and what I was thinking, but also give other people the same space to be able to have permission to be them without taking it personally. So, yeah.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I think that we all can benefit from hearing that story because it's those types of daily interactions, especially with parents, especially with family of origin people, that can be so triggering for all of us. I'm just in the middle of somatic experiencing training, which is a trauma training. And I just got out of one of our modules, and when we have adverse childhood experiences, when we have any kind of early stresses, it affects our sense of self and our boundary. And I love that you mentioned the word enmeshment, because we can forget where we end. It can get fuzzy. Like, where is it that I end and you begin? And that sort of fuzziness and enmeshment is particularly strong with parents, with our mothers, with family of origin. And this again underlines the gift of anger, because when we're strengthening that boundary, we come into that, stronger sense of knowing, oh, this is mine. This is on my side of the line, and your stuff and the handy wipes are on that side of the line.
Yeah.
So it's really a tremendous gift. And I can see when you talk about it being empowering and freeing, this freedom of just seeing, things in this, with this clarity and this new light.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so one thing, another process I work a lot with is Byron Katie and the work. But she talks about your business, my business, God's business. And like, what's happening inside of me is my business, and what's happening over there is not. It's somebody else's business, or it's God's business, And so, but with that, I'm not responsible for what's happening out there, but I am responsible for what's happening in here, and my mother's not. So just because my mom is saying those things and I'm getting angry about them, she's not responsible for that. Like, that's what's so having the way to like separate where I end and where someone else begins and start to take responsibility for what's happening inside yourself is hugely empowering, as you know. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. How can people work with you? What are your offerings? What are ways that people can get to work with you?
So I work mostly right now with women who have pelvic pain, vulvodynia, interstitial cystitis, any kind of pain during sex or pelvic pain. And I have a bunch of things. I have a website. So my website is radiantlifedesign.com. I have a free ebook there called 7 Reasons You're Still in Pain that people are welcome to download. You can also sign up for my newsletter, which includes the ebook and some other free trainings and things. There's a blog there. And I also have a 10-session program called Healing Female Pain. That's really, I mean, it includes a lot of this anger stuff, and it's just really about taking a woman who's having chronic pain or chronic pelvic pain through this process of re-embracing emotion and energy in their body and sexual energy, and using that for healing and creating more joy in their lives. So,
wonderful. So that's radiantlifedesign.com.
Yes.
Recommend that everyone go check this out. You can get more of Lorraine's wisdom there. And so, Lorraine, as we wrap up, is there any last thoughts, anything that you want to leave our audience with before we sign off?
I mean, just really thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to be here and and to talk with you. And I think it's such an important topic. So I'm really excited that you're sharing it, and I had fun talking with you about it. So thanks, Uma.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I encourage all of you guys to try this out, to use some sort of real life experience that's coming up. We never have to wait very long for something irritating to happen, let alone something, that's truly angering. So now you have a tool, an actual practical tool that you can use and just play with this and really just have fun with it. So again, thank you, Lorraine. And we can find Lorraine at radiantlifedesign.com.
Okay. Thanks so much, Uma.
Thank you.